be mistaken, Mamma." "I assure you, Lydia, I am not. Louisa must make an advantageous match. And," she conceded, eyeing her eldest child indulgently, "I am convinced that, with her looks, she cannot help but achieve her goal." "So I shall," Louisa asserted confidently. "That was not what I meant," Lydia explained. "Then what did you mean, brat?" Louisa snapped. "It is just that you said we must restore the family's fortunes." Lydia shook her head. "That implies that we at one time had a fortune to be restored. If anyone in our family ever had any wealth, I certainly never heard of it." It was Mrs. Bramwell's turn now to frown. Her daughter's practical observation clearly did not sit well with one whose ambition was to attain social distinction for her daughters, even if she could not procure as much for herself. The Bramwells were quite a respectable family, after all, and looked up to in the village as some of its most ancient inhabitants. There had been Bramwells at Laburnum Lodge for as long as anyone could remember. If they had little wealth, they had a certain degree of distinction. The present occupant was a solicitor, and of considerable standing in his small community. However, this was not enough to satisfy the mistress of the house. Her husband might be content with an obscure and quiet life in the country, but she was determined that her children should not be allowed to decline into mere bumpkins. Mrs. Bramwell had a cousin in London with her own pretensions, who had graciously consented to assist Louisa with her presentation into polite society. For this long-anticipated event, Mrs. Bramwell had been saving and planning many years. Now at last the time had come. Louisa was almost 19. Who could tell how long it might take for her to attach an eligible gentleman? Time, as all women knew, was not their friend in such matters. Better to strike while youth and beauty still had power to entice those who looked no deeper than the surface of things. Lydia could not see the thoughts jostling about in her mother's head, but she had wits enough to guess most of them. However, she had little expectation of any great match for her sister. Wealthy and influential men, she considered, rarely allied themselves to penniless nobodies from the country, however pretty they might be. Still, she looked forward to visiting London, a place she had heard much about but never seen. It would be quite an adventure. Alas, for her it was not to be. The very next day, a letter arrived. This was an event unusual enough to capture Lydia's interest. She observed her father pay the charge before carrying the folded and sealed paper into the parlour to examine its contents, and immediately followed him to see what she might learn. "Who's it from, Papa?" Louisa was quite as curious as Lydia. They rarely received mail. When they did, Papa had been known to mumble words which his children did not comprehend, but which surely were not kindly. Without a franc, one had liever not hear from one's relations, rather than having to pay for the privilege of reading their almost illegible prose. "Is it from my sister in Sussex?" Mrs. Bramwell asked her husband. "So it seems." Lydia eyed both her parents suspiciously. Papa's head was bent over the missive, so that she could perceive how the hair on his crown was noticeably thinner than that which fell across his brow. That same brow was furrowed now in the effort of concentration, and his lips compressed. "Is it what we've been waiting for?" his wife persisted. "It is what you have been waiting for, my dear," her husband answered wryly. "I, like Pilate, am eager to wash my hands of this awkward business." "What awkward business?" Lydia demanded before Louisa could ask the same question. "Lydia, my dear," Mrs. Bramwell hesitated a trifle. "You know that our poor resources will be stretched to their absolute limit by Louisa's presentation." "I'm amazed that they can stretch as far," her youngest daughter admitted bluntly. "Indeed?" Mamma seemed strangely pleased rather than pained by her perspicacity. "You do understand, don't you, dearest child?" Lydia stiffened at once. Mamma never referred to her as her dearest child, unless she was about to do or say something particularly unpleasant. On all other occasions, it was plain that Louisa was her favourite, just as Lydia knew herself to be Papa's favourite child. Not that either of her parents would have admitted as much, of course. "What is it, Mamma?"